Stardust, Chapter 20, Part 2. 10:30 a.m., May 2nd, 2015. Fitness Center. Lana had wandered for nearly an hour before she finally strode into the Soldiers' Fitness Center and gym. To the vast majority of XCOM personnel, she appeared to be her perfectly cheerful self. No one really thought to question her as she strode to the locker room and came out with her workout sweats and combat gloves on as she made her way to the punching bags. She did pause, however, when she caught sight of a clump of soldiers gathered near the mats, so she detoured to see what the fuss was about. The fuss was over 6.5 feet of Russian muscle and pride, and it was asserting both on the rather less impressive private from Strike 2. Lacking a good 6 inches and at least 50 pounds, the unfortunate private limped out of the ring with a pained expression. "Bah, come on, do not tell me that none of your elite soldiers can take me down. At least a little holiday had the guts to try," the Russian monster yelled, and the crowd groaned and started to disperse. So, Lana stepped up.
"Oh, you look like fun. So, you know what? I'll give it a shot,"
Lana shouted as she wormed her way towards the mats.
"What's this? A little girl wants a challenge?"
The Russian monster laughed, though it quickly died down once he realized that the onlookers had gone completely quiet. "Well then, I'll go easy on you. It would be terrible if I broke you too badly to go on missions, yes?" The monster grinned, and he noticed bets were being placed in the crowd, though his grin faltered once he overheard the majority of the bets were concerning how long he would last. Lana grinned all the wider and added a bit of sweetness to it.
"Oh my, that's very generous of you. Please, do go easy on me, okay?"
With her sickeningly sweet grin still on her face, she walked over to the gear rack and retrieved a set of headgear before assuming her place opposite the monster. Jenkins," a voice came from the crowd, and the newly promoted Lieutenant Paul Drzymski padded over to the female soldier.
"Jenkins, what's wrong? Look, I know that look." "Why? Whatever do you mean?"
Lana asked in reply, and Paul blanched at the grin coming to his face completely. Rather than press on the issue, Paul backed off then to turn to the monster. Do svidania," he said simply as he patted the monster on the shoulder and then stepped out of the ring.
"Alright kids, you know the drill. No broken bones, no injuries that puts anyone out of the lineup for missions. That clear?"
The referee, Lieutenant Fujikawa, said as she looked from the monster to Lana.
"Yeppers?"
Lana said, and she began to bounce up and down on her feet. With nearly a foot less height, and combined with that silly grin, she looked like a little kid when compared to her opponent.
"That's the look I'm going for."
Fujikawa gave the female soldier a flat look before blowing a short blast with her whistle. 2 seconds later, the Russian monster was out of the ring and struggling to breathe, and Lana was still bouncing and grinning. The bouncing, of course, was a feint. The monster expected a high blow to the head or shoulders, but Lana had timed her landing with her legs bent while the whistle blew, and she sprang right straight forward. Right closed fist executed a perfect diaphragm strike. Left palm heel strike to the sternum caused him to stumble backwards. Left foot hooked behind the monster's right leg with an exacerbating stumble, and the monster recovers footing but is now outside the fighting area on mats. Point to Lana. "Fucking dyke," the monster wheezed as he stepped back into the ring. Then the grin disappeared.
A hand nearly as big as Lana's entire head swooped down and slapped her with enough force to cause her to fall to the ground.
"Fucking dyke! How could you do this to me?" the monster screamed at her. She tried to straighten, but the monster backhanded her with a closed fist. Pain exploded around her eye and Lana fell to the ground.
"Ted, I was just choking. It was a choke,"
a young voice tried to explain.
"Stay quiet, Bill. It's not your fault. Let Big Sis Lana deal with this,"
she pleaded silently, and she cringed as she heard flesh connect and the boy cried out. "Don't you lie to me, boy," the monster growled. "I bet that you get that from your mother. She's corrupting you. You come home with stories about this thing chasing other girls, then you try to cover it up. The fucking dyke is too far gone. She's not gonna shame this family anymore." A boot sped into her chest and Lana felt something break inside of her, and the pain was too great. All she could do was just curl up into a ball and wait for the pain to stop.
"Danny, stop! You'll kill her!"
her mother cried out, and she was too silenced by the monster.
"Did I say you could speak?"
The monster roared at her before an unsettling calm fell over the scene.
"I bet you two were in on it together, right? What better way to ruin my life than to have little Lana be a carpet muncher, right? I won't tolerate any dykes in my house." The monster's voice drew close to Lana, and she cringed preemptively against the blow she knew was coming. "Danny, stop!"
There was a sound of flesh striking, followed by a crash and glass breaking and silent sobs.
This is my house, bitch. I've had enough of you two questioning my authority and corrupting my sons.
Heavy footsteps moved away, followed by keys jingling and a lock opening. A squeaky door wailed as it was thrown open. Only one door in the house makes that noise. The gun cabinet.
Bitches and dykes,
The monster muttered over the sound of 2 shotgun shells getting loaded into the breech.
it's about time I use you two to set a positive example for the boys. Deviance will not be tolerated. Backtalk will not be tolerated.
The click of the breech closing fills the room.
Daddy, don't! Daddy, stop!
A struggle started, and Lana does her best to rise and make her move. She only had one chance.
God damn it, boy, you get out of my way, or God so help me, I will shoot you too.
Lana's eyes had swollen to the point that she could no longer see what was going on to her side, but she still winced in sympathy as she heard the dull thud of a rifle stock striking someone repeatedly.
Daddy, you don't have to do this,
Her mother pleaded.
just put the gun down and we can talk about... Talk? That's all you ever do, is talk.
The monster yelled.
Talk. All day and night. I'm sure you talked Lana into the life of sin she's now in, and you're gonna try and talk me into forgiving her? Well, haven't you heard the good news, sweetheart? God forgives, but I sure as hell don't.
Bang. The monster's back, once was powerful and muscled, disappeared into a cloud of blood and pulverized meat. He toppled forward wordlessly, dead before he landed on the floor. Lana looked down the barrel of the shotgun she had retrieved from the locker. She couldn't even hold it steady and it dropped to the floor.
Point to Jenkins, and that's the end of the match.
Lana found herself being pulled back and her vision snapped back into focus. The monster, the Russian monster, lay on the map before her with his arms up to try and defend his already bloody face. Several welts were already clearly visible along his arms, chest, and abdomen, but the most notable features were on his face. His lip was cut and bleeding, and a massive welt was developing along the side of his face, but the most striking change was the fear in his eyes. Not the fear of pain or injury, but fear of her.
Jenkins, you look like you were gonna murder him with your bare hands,
Paul whispered once Lana had gotten back up to her feet.
Seriously, what was wrong with you?
Him. A new challenger had entered the ring, who was just securing his own combat gloves and headgear while giving Lana his own level stare.
You know, I should have known you'd be here,
Matt said grimly. Lana stepped away from the lieutenant and re-entered the ring with a grin that was less warm and sweet than cold and shark-like.
And I'm glad you found me. To be perfectly honest, I've wanted this to happen for a very, very long time.
And I've wanted to smack you just about every time you open your damn mouth these days, Matt replied, and he didn't even attempt to smile back. Lana began to bounce on her feet and she answered back.
Well then, someone is going to be rather disappointed by the end of this match.
Yeah, the one who'll be disappointed is back at the Stardust lab. The grin disappeared again. I'm not wrong. Nothing you say or do will change what I know is right. Lana stopped her bouncing and widened her stance, and her eyes began to narrow. Matt mirrored his movements, and the entire room held its breath. Strike 1, assemble for deployment. Strike 2, assemble for deployment. Strike 3... The public announcement system drowned out the collective groan of onlookers, but they didn't let their disappointment slow them down as they flooded towards the ready room. Paul gave both Matt and Lana something not quite severe enough to be a glare. Ready room, you two. Now. Whatever this is, it can wait. Neither soldier acknowledged that order, but both stepped back and turned to follow. 10:35 a.m., May 2nd, 2015. Engineering. The engineers and workers toiling away in the workshop had been with Charles Shen long enough to know that if he wasn't smiling, then it would be best to stay out of his way. Such was the case when Charles stormed into the workshop that his normally friendly coworkers and subordinates hunched down or otherwise lowered their profiles to avoid attracting his wrath.
Crowley, Hamel, testing in one of the science labs resulted in damage to the facility that we need to repair now. Drop what you're doing and follow me.
Shen barked without even looking at the two men he called. The two luckless engineers literally dropped what they were doing and ran to catch up with Shen's long strides.
So, where's Zhang? Here, sir.
Zhang reported from somewhere behind Shen as he thought he materialized out of thin air.
Good,
Shen stated as they headed towards the storage rooms.
The
Testing misfire didn't damage any complex components such as electrical or networking. It's mainly structural damage that will need to be repaired. I expect these repairs to be completed within... Shen stopped in his tracks as his head whipped around to the storage room dedicated to holding alien materials. A soft glow could be seen emanating from the door's viewport. The engineer took a right turn for the door and swiped his access badge across the lock reader before pushing the door open. Dozens of crates filled with various curios, which included weapon fragments retrieved from the field to complete computer systems torn from crashed UFOs, lined the shelves, but sitting on the center table was a small box-like device covered in alien lettering that glowed with enough light to illuminate its section of the room. Shen scowled at the device as he approached before turning back to the door and yelling, "Which one of you meatheads left an alien device activated in storage?" "That's the beacon I delivered to you in Hong Kong," Zhang muttered under his breath. Sir?" Hamill said tentatively, which brought the wrath of the usually cheerful engineer upon him. The power switch we found is set to the off position." Shen turned back to the device, and just like the engineer had said, the power switch that had been identified was set in the off position. There was no cabling to power the device, and the Illyrium battery had been removed as well, and yet, it was now active. "Okay, new plan. You two prep the beacon for transport. I need to talk to Bradford." "Shen, Bradford?" The comms headset around Shen's neck buzzed, and he brought it up to his ear with a perplexed look. This is Shen?" 10:45 a.m., May 2nd, 2015. Briefing room. 6 full-strike teams complete with full kits packed themselves into the briefing room as Bradford entered. Immediately, the chatter died and the briefing began without preamble. "Approximately 15 minutes ago, satellite detection discovered an alien craft entering our atmosphere. 4 Scout-class saucers and a 5th ship that's bigger than anything previously encountered. Current heading is this base's current position," Bradford said as a flurry of images appeared on the screen behind him. As he finished his first statement, the room collectively sucked in its breath. "Dr. Shen reports that salvage thought to be a beacon spontaneously activated at approximately the same time. The leading theory is that this beacon is drawing the enemies to us, so the operation has 2 objectives. The first objective will be carried out by Strike 1. The mission will be to deliver the now active alien beacon to a cargo train waiting in a yard near the urban center. Then, engage the train's locomotive to draw the battleship's formation away from both this base and population centers. Sergeant Harris, Private Jenkins, you two will be in charge of carrying and deploying the beacon. I am authorizing the use of wallflower equipment for this operation, so please retrieve it. The beacon will be waiting for you." Matt and Lana wordlessly separated from the mob of soldiers and headed towards the exit. "The second part of the operation will be detailed in the Sky Rangers while the first part is underway. Dismissed." 10:55 a.m., May 2nd, 2015, Stardust Labs. Twilight's game of solitaire was going horribly. After Lana and Matt left the game prematurely, Kim had taught Twilight a game that she could play all by herself. With solitaire, she could kill time when there was nothing to do between tests or visits, Kim said. It was a fun way to pass the time, Kim said.
This game...
Twilight stared at the predicament she now found herself in, and she had to resist the urge to flip the table over in frustration. For the 3rd time, she found herself with no options to reveal more cards or add to existing stacks, which meant the game was lost.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
Twilight was just about to reshuffle the cards when the door to her habitat opened and came in a rather stressed-looking Matt and Lana. Both were now wearing bulky segmented vests and a plethora of tools and gadgets around their belts, including a silvery pronged hammer that made her distinctly uncomfortable. There also appeared to be full face helmets in their hands. Matt in particular appeared to have a large backpack slung over his shoulders. Both of her friends also had several bits of English language written on their clothes. On the front of each was spelled Harris and Jenkins. Something about those words.
Twilight, I hate to just drop in and make demands,
Lana said quickly.
But we need a really big favor. Can you cast Wallflower on us? Wait, what? Why? I thought I wasn't supposed to use that anymore. I don't want to get either of you in trouble.
Twilight started, but the impatient looks the two gave each other caused her to pause.
There's something terrible going on, isn't there?
I'm afraid so, Twilight. We need to go out and stop it from happening, but in order to do that, we need Wallflower. Matt explained quickly. Though we need it now. Time is of the essence.
Oh, okay.
Twilight murmured. She cast the spell on him.
Okay, it's done. Okay. Well, good luck, you two. Well, Thank you,
Lana chirped.
Thanks, Twilight.
Matt agreed, and they both turned to leave the habitat as they slipped their helmets on.
Harris here. Jenkins and I are en route to the hangar. ETA is 5 minutes.
Twilight might have waved goodbye, but she was too distracted as the pieces fell into place in her mind. Twilight moved to follow, but hesitated when she saw that they were no longer alone, and 2 more humans were in the corridor. They wore thick, segmented vests and rather scary full-face helmets, and wrapped around their waists and legs were an impressive amount of pockets and pouches. One carried a large metal tool in its hand that looked like a metal box with 2 pipes sprouting from the end. The other carried 2 smaller tools, one that looked almost exactly like the one that Charles had when they first met, while the other looked like a silvery hammer with prongs protruding from the head. The second tool looked familiar, but Twilight just couldn't put her hoof on why that was, so rather than dither any longer, she stepped outside to stand beside Charles.
Are these your friends too?
She asked hesitantly, and Charles gave a nod in response.
I suppose they are. This is Corporal Harris.
The human indicated to the twin tool user, who nodded slightly but otherwise didn't respond.
And this is Private Jenkins. They'll be joining us on our short walk to the quarters we've arranged for you.
Matt looked at Twilight sympathetically and said,
When we first found you, Twilight, you were defending yourself from imminent death, and that thing you killed would have killed more people afterwards.
Buildings burned around her. 3 humans dead across the clearing, the bug crushed in front of her, the shadow falling over her. She looked over her shoulder and sees another human in armor and pointed that silver tool at her. A flash of pain, then darkness. She awakes in a giant glass jar surrounded by humans with unfriendly faces. The walls of the jar open up and the limbs reach towards her. Twilight swallowed and tried to breathe in and out as she grappled with the realization that Matt, her own friend, had been the one who had brought her here in the first place.